Welcome to My Boomer Buddies podcast, where we tell it like it was and is. Here's the star of the show, Rick Reed.
That's Terry Walsh, my boomer buddy, and first time appearance by another boomer buddy of mine, Kathy St. Martin. Ladies, welcome to My Boomer Buddies podcast.
Thanks for having us, Rick.
Yes, thanks, Rick.
We've done some TV show nostalgic look backs, and we're going to do it again. We've got the Paul Henning shows from the early 60s, mid 60s, going into early 1970. He did 3 shows that you've probably heard of. They're called the Beverly Hillbillies, Petticoat Junction, and its spin-off Green Acres. So the first show to come out was the Beverly Hillbillies.
Come and listen to the story about a man named Jed. A poor mountaineer barely kept his family fed. And then one day he was shooting at some food, and up through the ground come a bubbling crude oil, that is, black gold, Texas tea. Well, the first thing you know, old Jed's a millionaire. The kinfolk said, Jed, move away from there. Said, California is the place you ought to be. So they loaded up the truck and they moved to Beverly Hills, that is, swimming pools, movie stars. A Beverly Hillbilly.
Terry, I'm going to let you start off. What do you know about the Beverly Hillbillies?
It makes me smile. TV was simpler then, very simple. And it started in 1962. It made its debut, which I was about 8. So, good times. It starred Buddy Epson as Jed Clampett. Granny, whose name was Daisy Mae Moses, was played by Irene Ryan. And you will see her, if you watch old nostalgic movies, you'll see her a lot. Ellie Mae was played by Donna Douglas, and Jethro Bodine, who didn't have too many smarts, was played by Max Baer.
He was the 5th grader, right?
I think he did 5th grade 3 times. It's interesting, Terry, that you bring up these characters. Daisy Mae Moses, a lot of people didn't know that was Granny's name. They just thought she was Granny Clampett, or technically it's Jed Clampett's mother-in-law. And then Ellie Mae Kath is Jed's daughter.
And I have to say, I think I like Granny the best of all the characters. She had quite the wit.
I have to agree. I loved Granny.
Mm-hmm.
What was it about her that she weighed 90 pounds and she ruled the roost?
Yes, that. And she, like Kathy said, she was very witty. I loved that she always used to bring animals into this Beverly Hills mansion, goats and other animals.
Critters?
Critters, yep.
Right.
Critters, yeah. Ellie Mae called them critters too. Ellie Mae had a fondness for taking care of the critters, and it seemed like Granny liked to prepare food out of critters.
Right. I watched one session where Granny was telling Ellie Mae to get her critters out of the kitchen or they were going to become supper,
And what did they call their swimming pool? Do you remember?
The cement pond.
Yes.
The summary for the first episode says a rural family reluctantly exchanges a 1-room cabin for $25 million and a 35-room mansion after they strike oil on their land. Of course, the story's told in the theme song, right?
Yes, it is. And a petrochemical plant bought them out of the oil that Jed discovered for $25 million, which in those days was quite a lot of money.
Checking it out, Kathy, I always thought they were from Tennessee or something. They were from the Ozarks. They're from southern Missouri. It didn't even occur to me to looking that up. Yeah, Beverly Hillbillies. And supposedly they were based off a real family, hillbillies that moved to Beverly Hills, but they didn't live in a mansion like that. But that's how the story goes anyway. So you both liked Granny.
Yeah.
I like Mr. Drysdale.
He was a scoundrel.
Probably why I liked him. Yeah, he was a brown nose, and he was always trying to keep the money in his bank. He didn't want Jed to go anywhere else with that money. He was also trying to make them more sophisticated and everything. Mr. Drysdale's wife just loathed the Clampetts and the social status that she had. She didn't want to get that soiled by the Clampetts. So it was always an interesting dynamic. And of course, you remember Nancy Culp. She played
Yes.
Miss Hathaway.
Miss Jane Hathaway.
Right.
And I think Jethro had a little crush on her.
I never picked up on that. You think so?
Yeah,
Yep.
I think so.
Well, in the early shows, she was teaching them about using a bathtub in their suite, and he thought she was calling him sweet. So he told Jed Clampett, "Oh my goodness, I'm gonna have a girlfriend here. She's calling me sweet," when really she was talking about the bedrooms. So it was cute.
I read that they filmed the outside at a place called the Chatwell Mansion, and that was located at 150 Bel Air Road. So it was a real mansion that was out in LA and out in Bel Air, Beverly Hills.
Do you have any favorite episodes, either of you, that you recall?
I just really liked them all. I used to get so mad at Mr. Drysdale because he was, always trying to get at their money and hatch some devious plan, and it never ended out working. So
Now, the Beverly Hillbillies went from 1962 to 1971, so that's 9 seasons.
yes,
It was on CBS, and it's 274 episodes. And they shot quite a few in black and white, but even more in color. You can see them in black and white and color if you look for it still to this day. Syndication was a big deal and is a big deal. And they kept things in mind when they were making the shows with syndication in mind.
I remember one of the memories I have as a kid is when we got a color TV. I don't remember the year, but that was such a big deal when one of our neighbors got their first color TV, and then we were all over it. Mom and Dad, can we get a color TV? That was a big deal.
a big deal.
Yeah.
The Beverly Hillbillies was first in the Nielsen ratings for their first 2 seasons. And then it was also for the rest of the time it played, the other 7 seasons, it was in the top 20 all the time. So it was a well-loved comedy.
Okay, speaking of well-loved comedies, Petticoat Junction came into being, another creation by Paul Henning. And that ran from 1963 to 1970. And that had 222 episodes on CBS.
Kate was played by Bea Benaderet, and she also played Mrs. Pearl Bodine on the Beverly Hillbillies. So she just did a little jump over to the Shady Rest Hotel, which she was the proprietor of. Edgar Buchanan played Uncle Joe Carson. I mean, he wasn't hers. He was Kate's uncle. He used to be famous for sitting in the rocking chair out on the porch watching the train go by.
There's Uncle Joe. He's a moving kind of slow.
Yeah, right.
At the junction. Interestingly enough, one of the daughters, Billy Joe Bradley, was played by 3 different people.
Yeah.
She was first played by Janine Riley, who left to start she wanted to be more in movies. And then there was Gunilla Hutton. She played for 2 years, but she missed 11 episodes on the second year she was Billy Joe. So I am guessing that's why she wasn't back for a 3rd year. Then Meredith McCrae became Billy Joe. She was also a singer. And so I believe that's kind of how the show moved more into musical version. They lived in Hooterville, which is a fictitious town. in mid-Missouri, and it's kind of based on a town called Eldon, Missouri, with a hotel there that was called the Barris Hotel. And Pixley was the next town next to Hooterville. You'll hear them a lot saying they're going to Pixley for the day. Then there was Bobby Joe. That was played by Laurie Saunders. There was a different Bobby Joe when it first started out, played by Pat Wood. Then there was Linda Kay Hennings, who played Betty Joe.
That's Paul Henning, the creator's daughter, correct?
Yes, yep. No nepotism there. So a little interesting tidbit about Linda Kay Henning was that she married Steve Miner on the show. His name was Steve Elliott. They got married in 1968 season. They also got married in real life at the same time, and that marriage lasted about 5 years.
One of the things that I read was the train was an 1890 vintage steam train, and they ran it like a taxi. It had certain times of the day that it would go through the town, and so you had to be ready when the train was going to be available.
Technically, it was not a junction. It was a water stop. Like the Beverly Hillbillies, they had a great theme song. And at the opening, you see the three girls apparently skinny dipping in that water tower where the trains come to get water, and they throw their petticoats over the side.
Right.
Thus, Petticoat Junction. Kathy, do you have a favorite sister on there? Character? The blonde was Billy Joe, the brunette was Bobby Joe, and the redhead was Betty Joe.
I think I would say Bobby Joe, probably. Yep, and I have fond memories of watching this show, probably with my mom. You know, I had lots of brothers, and the younger sister, she probably wasn't around for parts of those, and so my mom would watch this show with me at times. So that was nice.
Tere, you had mentioned Bea Benaderet, and you mentioned she played Pearl on Beverly Hillbillies.
She did. And she ended up getting sick, and she ultimately died. Cause of death, they said, was pneumonia. And I kind of got a feeling they used that a lot for cause of death, because several of these actors and actresses died of pneumonia. But she was sick, and so they brought on June Lockhart, which we all know was Timmy's mom on Lassie, and she took over for the last couple seasons as Dr. Craig. She was a doctor that set up a practice out there.
I remember that. And then, of course, the country store was ran by Sam Drucker.
Yes.
That was kind of a hangout. And you also saw Sam Drucker in the spinoff series Green Acres, which ran from 1965 to 1971 on CBS and 170 episodes. Kathy, what are your recollections of Green Acres?
I didn't watch that one as much as the others. As I was looking back, it is an enjoyable show in a sense. You know, they move from the big city of New York to the farm, and they have issues there. So it's an interesting concept, and Ava Gabor, I really enjoyed her in that, it just fitting her into the country life and how she related to the people of the town.
Tere, give us the synopsis on Green Acres, please.
Green Acres, Eddie Albert played Oliver Wendell Douglas, and his wife was, as Kathy said, Ava Gabor. She played Lisa Douglas. She was a socialite, and the other main star was Tom Lester. He played Eb Dawson, and he was their handyman. And he had a little more smarts than Jethro Bodine, but not a whole lot. So
he was a little sarcastic too, which was kind of fun.
Yes. Interestingly enough, Eddie Albert was born Eddie Albert Heimber, And he changed his name when he was a singer on the radio because the announcer kept calling him Eddie Hamburger.
Oh
So,
no.
Know that.
so he changed that. He's one of the other ones that also died of pneumonia.
Yep.
Ava, she was married 5 times in real life, not as many as her sister Jaja, but it seems that they collected husbands. I guess that's what socialites do. I don't know.
Mm.
She was a businesswoman. She marketed wigs and some other things after the show. There was also Mr. Haney,
Oh man.
and you Mr. Haney and Mr. Kimball, and you almost got irritated listening to them. Mr. Haney was a scoundrel. Mr. Kimball worked for the state, some kind of government official like Department of Agriculture or something, and he just couldn't get his thoughts out quite clear either. I kind of think that Oliver bit off more than he could chew when he bought the old Haney place, and he had to do all the renovating because she still wore her long gowns and her little
Right.
high heels with the fuzzy thing on them, and she was still very glamorous, and he had to get in there and do the work.
Now, we would be remiss if we didn't mention the elderly couple neighbors, the Ziffels, Fred and where's Ziffel?
Yes.
And they didn't have any kids, but they did have a pig,
Yes, they did.
Arnold Ziffel.
Arnold the pig.
That was one trained pig. They dress it up and send it to school and everything. Kathy, do you remember the pig? I know you didn't watch it too much, but do you remember Arnold?
Yeah, there was one scene that I just was watching a little while ago about this young man who was conniving with one of the locals. This young man wanted to date this young woman when she found out that he was involved in this scam to buy out the whole town and build up this huge city. He was pretty sad that he did that to her, but she had the pig. She had the pig with her, and she said, "Even he doesn't like you now."
Yeah, some of the supporting cast, like we mentioned, was Mr. Haney, the
Yes.
greasy salesman, and Eb Dawson. He was the sarcastic farmhand that Tere mentioned, and Fred and Doris Ziffel and their pig Arnold. And then Sam Drucker, who was also on Petticoat Junction. There's crossover there, and Hank Kimball. So they had some interesting characters on there. All three of these shows were by Paul Henning. And Tere, you mentioned earlier, the ratings were really good.
They were on CBS. They were all very good and spun off of each other.
Right.
So that was interesting. And then they did something in Hollywood, and this is when Beverly Hillbillies was canceled. They did a thing called the Rural Purge, and they
Right.
were trying to get more urban people to watch shows. So they wanted to bring in some classy shows and get rid of the rural image. That kind of took care of these three. But these were good, wholesome programs that you could watch with your parents or your kids. And, there was no swearing or anything like that. So,
One thing that I noticed that was interesting to me was, especially I noticed it on, I think, the Beverly Hillbillies. When they did advertisements, they were quite subtle. It would be like a billboard with Kellogg's on it, or just a little box of the cereal when they're doing the names of all the people involved in the show. So
Yeah.
that was interesting to me too.
Now, TV does prove to be cyclical with the rural purge. And before that, I did an episode with a couple other boomer buddies on TV shows where they capitalized on the James Bond hysteria, the popularity of James Bond, where you had Get Smart, which was a comedy with a spy. You had the Wild Wild West, which was basically James Bond on a horse, and so on. So Hollywood does that. You're right. 3 wholesome shows by Paul Henning brought a lot of pleasure to us boomers. Kathy St. Martin, Terry Walsh, Rick Reed here. We all enjoyed those shows. And we plan on doing more shows on topics like this. So if you have anything that you want to hear about or talk about on this show, write in the comments on YouTube. Go ahead, comment below. We'll monitor that, and then we'll consider everything, and we'll do some more shows like this. And if you're listening on Spotify or Buzzsprout, just send an email to myboomerbuddies4, the number 4, myboomerbuddies4@gmail.com. Ladies, this has been really fun. Tere, Kathy, thanks for your contributions on this. Like I've said before, a lot of this is from the top of our head and what we remember as well. And it kind of ignites a little bit of fire from the past, which is good. It's good to look back, and it's also good to look forward. And I think this is very healthy. Tere, you have any closing comments?
Oh, yes, I do. Who's that behind you, Rick?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. This is a piece of artwork that was commissioned for your late husband, James Walsh. What we've done is, since his passing, we created limited edition prints, Tere, that you have available.
Fans can get this print by emailing myself at stew854@hotmail.com. That's stew854@hotmail.com. If you live in the Twin Cities, you can pick it up and there will be no shipping charges. If you live in a different part of the country, and I know he had a lot of St. Louis fans, you can email me your address and send a cashier's check for $100 for the print and $15 for shipping and handling. If you email me, I will give you the address to send it to, and then you will get your print shortly thereafter.
Thanks, Tere. James meant so much to a lot of us. And Kathy, I know you're a big music fan, and we'll do some music shows with you on there. I know you really love the upper Midwest music scene, and growing up together, we kind of learned to like the same music as well. Do you have any closing thoughts, Kathy?
I appreciate the opportunity. It was fun to relook at these shows again. It's been years since I've thought about them even, but they were fun memories. So that's great. Thanks for having me. Nice to meet you, Tere.
It was nice to meet you too, Kathy. Thank you.
All right. Two of my special boomer buddies together for the first time. Thanks everybody for watching. On behalf of Tere Walsh and Kathy St. Martin, I'm Rick Reed for My Boomer Buddies podcast. We'll see you around the block.
Well, now it's time to say goodbye to Jed and all his kin. They would like to thank you folks for kindly dropping in. You're all invited back next week to this locality to have a heaping helping of their hospitality. Hillbilly, that is. Set a spell. Take your shoes off. Y'all come back now. Here?